Hi, I'm Vaness Henry. I'm a 6'2" ego manifester, and I want to show you the weird way I read the human design variables. I'm going to show you an example of a celebrity star that I think is an amazing example of someone in the spotlight, and therefore we can learn from them in a really curious way because we see them on display. The first celebrity star I want to take a closer look at is the one and only Trixie Mattel. I think Trixie Mattel is an amazing example of a Valleys person. Valleys people are very sensitive to how much they plug into things, and it's very necessary for them to disconnect sometimes. They're sensitive to the volumes, amounts, limits, how much of something they take in before they've had enough of it. And these people are very sensitive to pushing past their limits sometimes, which if we're not listening to the body's signs and symptoms, we can develop a lot of health ailments. And unfortunately, over the past few years, Trixie Mattel has had some health ailments come up that we've watched unfold through the public eye. And I want to show you where we look at deep in her human design variables so that you can see how her inner architecture works. Trixie is an amazing example that we are all waking up to the fact that there are different factors in our lifestyles that can affect our health and wellness. What I think understanding the human design variables offers us is that we each have a unique set of predetermined symptoms that our body uses to communicate with us. And when our body is giving us those signs, it's an opportunity for us to use our awareness, pause, zoom out, and try and see the bigger picture of what our body is trying to communicate to us. Our bodies are very, very intelligent, and what I'm hoping you take away from this video is not only how amazing an example Trixie Mattel is, but how evolved and special your own body is to inspire curiosity within you to get to know your body's signs and symptoms. Okay, let's take a closer look at my favorite drag queen, Trixie Mattel. So this is Trixie Mattel's body graph using the genetic matrix calculator. I love this calculator. There are a lot of celebrities that you can look up, but something that is very important to always be double checking when you're looking at information this deep within the inner architecture of the body graph is you always want to be looking at the birth time. It's not likely that Trixie was actually born at 8 o'clock, although it's possible. When we're looking at information this deep in the design, we really do need to know if you were born at 7:59 or 8:01 or 8:11. When we have information that is specific and down to the minute, I'm more confident in translating it because when we look at the tonal level in the design, which we can find here in these green triangles, this information actually can change minute to minute. So most people, when you ask them for their birth information, they actually give a rounded time. And in my practice in evaluating this for people, something that I've really noticed, when people ask their parents often remember a rounded time. Even if the birth time is documented in the hospital, that too is often a rounded time. And I noticed as we became even more modern, there was more acute attention paid to the birth time, and people are better about getting birth information down to the minute. But just as a conservative, safe approach, when you're looking at information this deep in the body graph, you always want to be double checking that we have as specific a birth time as possible. So right before we get started, it's important to note that this looks like it's rounded and therefore information could change. I did some additional calculations, and when it comes to Trixie's chart, there's not much that shifts at the tonal level in her design, so I feel confident translating it, but it's always important to know that it could shift if all of a sudden Trixie's like, yeah, I was actually born at 8:16, or I was actually born at 7:53. We really do need a birth time that is that specific when we're looking at the variables in human design. I think with a lot of New age cultures now, we hear a lot about the birth time and it's kind of been parodied and we tease each other about it. You know, the cool girlies are like, what's your birth information? Where were you born? What time were you born? Call your mom. And I think that's funny and charming in our culture. And I think that will become more, I think we will begin to do that more. I know when my son was born, I was examining the clock. I know girlfriends, when they were giving birth, same thing, they were examining the clock. However, sometimes you're so caught in the moment because you're splitting in two and giving birth to someone, that it's important to have another person in the room who is observing the time. And in my opinion, a lot of the nursing staff has even cued into this and they will say, baby's born at 7:27 or whatever the case may be. So just as a reminder, when we're looking at information this deep, we really do need it down to the minute in the birth time. What can happen is if you're using a rounded birth time like 7:45 or 7:50, anything that ends in a 0 or a 5, I like to personally challenge and just do some additional calculations on either side of the birth time, just to see if anything changes. But we're going to be looking at this area today. When we're looking at the variables in human design, we're looking at these 4 arrows that flank the head of the body graph. I really like how Genetic Matrix presents it. The colors are presented in these yellow circles, and the tone is presented in this green triangle. There's also a base calculation that we can find when we look at the chain view of something. So I just want to show you a quick example of that. So we're opening up her whole depths here. So for example, we can see gate 20, line 3, color 3, tone 3, and base 2. So that's the whole depth of her information. But for our purposes today, we're going to be looking at the colors and tones, and we're going to lean specifically on translating her tones and her colors in her body's variable. So let's go back to our regular view where we can see Trixie's birth information. So we have birth information of August 23rd, 1989, born at 8 a.m. In Milwaukee, United States. When we're entering the birthplace, we just need the nearest large city. If you grew up in a small town, you want to just select the nearest large city so that we can do that calculation. This is pulling up as a 36-year-old 1-3 emotional manifesting generator. The first thing that stands out to me in her body graph is this totally open heart. When the ego center is totally open, it almost acts as, well, I think any totally open center, aside from when it shows up in the reflector design type, it almost acts as a mirror to whatever its first environment was. So whenever we see a totally open center, there's always this kind of predisposition that these people could be taken advantage of. When we have a totally open ego center, something that I often see is this potential for unlimited wisdom. And in order to actually accrue that wisdom, they usually go through some shit. In the case of an undefined, totally open ego center, these people are sometimes taken advantage of before they actually learn their self-worth, learn their value. So looking at this chart right away, the 2 totally open centers, the ajna right here and the ego or heart right here, those stand out to me. This person is learning what inspires them and how to think about things and form their own opinions, and they're learning how to set their own values and find worth in things. So right away, when we think of a person who has come from a place where they didn't have a lot of privilege, and then they make and build this incredible life for themselves, and they have teams of people that they support and who count on them and their business and their likeness. Trixie has a makeup company. She's a world famous drag queen. She's an author. She's a reality star. She's a renovation star. She's such a great example of the manifesting generator and that 1-3 investigating martyr profile of just getting in and trying new things, breaking up with them when you're done, and learning her limits and what works for her in her life. So the totally open ego center, I could see that it would be very challenging when a lot of people start counting on you for your work, and that it could make you feel you have something to prove in order to keep things going. And the not self themes that we have in the ego center are something to prove. You feel like you have something to prove to yourself, to your family, to the world. When that center is undefined, that's actually not true. You don't have anything to prove, even though it really feels like you do. And a lot of the learning here is recognizing, I don't have anything to prove here. And I think that Trixie is an amazing example of watching this mature and evolve in real time. Just out the gate, that really stands out to me, that she might be burdened with things sometimes. Something else that's very interesting with the undefined head centers here, she has often commented about something in her neck, her posture, and having issues here. And it's just neat that this area is totally open and somewhat vulnerable. It's almost like we could see a predisposition for some types of ailments that might happen there. And this is amplified by what we see happening at the tonal level. But before we get that deep, let's start with looking at the color level right here, because this is really what I want to talk about. These are called the human design variables. There are 4 variables that impact the quality of health and wellness that we experience in our life. How do we have to feed ourselves, which we find here in the determination variable? How am I determined to experience nourishment? We also have the environment variable. What lifestyle and habitat do I need to be in order to be healthy and thrive? We can't plant all plants at certain places in the world. They won't grow everywhere. And human beings are kind of the same. We thrive in certain environments, and there's 6 environments that we can each thrive in, and we all resonate to different things. Over on this side of the body graph, we have the personality variables. This is your spirit, your consciousness, the formless part of you. This bottom variable is called the perspective variable. It's how you see the world around you. And the variable on top of it is the motivation variable. This is how you build awareness. So these 4 variables can really impact your wellness: how you're eating, what your lifestyle is and where you live, how you see your worldview around you, and how you make sense of things happening in your life, how you become more intelligent and aware. For our video today, we're going to be focusing on this area to really understand Trixie's body and how her signs and symptoms are expressing through her so that we can all collectively learn about it. So a 5th color in the environment variable is a valleys person. Valleys people are really, really sensitive to how much of something they participate in. They are sensitive to the frequencies, the volume, the amount. There's an acoustic sensitivity here. We see a lot of singers or models, or think about that catwalk or in the recording booth. There is a sound sensitivity here, but in my studies, what I've noticed is it's more of an information sensitivity. It's more about not so much loudness, but how much. Volume as in how much, not as in how loud. Although there is sound sensitivity here, usually what I see is people plug into experiences and they overstay. They push past their limits. And sometimes we hear phrasing in our life like, you got to push past your limits. But actually, for people who have 5th colors in their body, this 5th color of valleys like Trixie has, or a sound color person, which she does not have, these people must actually really respect their limits. It's actually not safe to push past limit because the body will then start to have breakdowns, and it can have all kinds of breakdowns, whether that's autoimmune, whether that's chronic illnesses. It could be absolutely anything. It would depend on some of the inner architecture that we see within the design. So something that Trixie is sensitive to, whenever we have a 5th color in human design, it can sometimes transfer to another color. You have this full spectrum of possibility in how your energy might express itself. And when you are a 5th color valleys person, your energy might sometimes transfer to a markets person. And markets people are all about entrepreneurship, all about their trade and what they do to make money. And it's very important that they have healthy exchanges in their life. But Trixie's actually a valleys person. It's good for her to be plugged into numerous things, especially as a manifesting generator with a ton of creativity. But the risk is she stays plugged into something too long and starts to lean too much of one of her trades. I feel like we've been watching this happen with her in her relationship to drag. As she has aged, drag has become a little bit more challenging. She's been open about how hard it is on her body. And when we have a landscape environment, whether we are mountains, valleys, or shores, these people are really sensitive to when the atmosphere changes around them. So when we have a caves, markets, and kitchens person, they're very sensitive to what's going on in their life, in their house, in their immediate relationships. Valleys people, mountains people, shores people, these are the landscape environments. They're not so sensitive to what is happening in the hardscape, but the landscape. So for example, let's say you live in a neighborhood and all of a sudden there's a robbery across the street. Well, you might not feel so safe in there anymore in your neighborhood because it happened so close to home. But actually, mountains, valleys, and shores people have the potential to be more rattled by this because the wider landscape and their atmosphere has shifted. So in the case of Trixie's relationship with drag, suddenly it's become hard. Something in the landscape has shifted. She's matured. She's gotten older, and leaning on that part of her trade that she's built into her makeup company, that she's built, it's this character she's designed. It's becoming harder to perform, and she is doing more things out of drag, which I think this is healthy for her. So the valleys person is at risk of sometimes leaning too heavily on one of their trades. They get too caught up in that one skill when it's really beneficial to have multiple outlets to spill your energy into. Let's now consider that she has a totally open heart. And sometimes it may feel that she has something to prove, or there's a lot of other people that she has to take care of. let's imagine that this is a person whose first part of their life was in deep suffering. And then they created a character to keep them safe and perform as. And this character is confident and feminine and powerful and in control of things, and almost an exaggerated part of her character. Trixie Mattel's original name, I guess, her out of drag name is Brian Furcus. And so Brian, the individual, has created this character Trixie and has had extreme fame and wealth and success through this character. So imagine the conflict if it all of a sudden becomes challenging to dress up and perform as this character, right? When you feel like you owe so much to this character and this character helped you build this whole life, it could just be challenging to change the relationship dynamic there. But Trixie has been very vocal and obvious about the fact that drag has become more hard. She has started to create things where she is outside of drag, and I think that's a really good move. Something else that we watched happen with Trixie is that she started to become unwell. She started to be in a lot of projects. She started to lose weight. We later found out that she was in a relationship that was falling apart. And our career, where we live, and who we're in a relationship with is really what we're examining when we look at the environment variable. It's not just about where you live on the globe. It's also about the lifestyle and habitat that comes with whatever you're doing in life. So the people who fill your environment hugely affect this. All the relationships you're in, she would need to be in relationships as a Valleys person where in order for the relationship to resonate with her, she really needs to have clear, open communication. There has to be like a two-way flow of connection and information in her friendships, in her family life, in her romantic relationships. Otherwise, it just may not work for her very well. When we have a first tone in the valley, now again, there's a chance that this might not be the accurate tone for her based on her birth time. However, this does stay a 1 for quite some time, so we are going to translate it. This is a sense of smell in her environment. So this is somebody who's going to have really keen instincts when they resonate to an environment. When they're in a lifestyle or a space, it's like they have super keen instincts. It's also can show up as like they smell things that aren't there. Now, when you smell things that aren't there, you're picking up on pheromones, but also you might literally smell something. Like they might literally be like, this person stinks. This offer stinks. This is, that's language that might be, that they could play with there. And if this person is not listening to their instincts, we can start to have breakdowns and impairments, usually in this area of the body, anything that's kind of connected to the nose. So that can be any nasal issues, any nose issues, any kind of anything with the ear, mouth, throat, that whole area. We could just have breakdowns there because the body is trying to communicate something in the lifestyle is not resonating with me, and I'm trying to give you a sign that this doesn't work for me. Maybe your instincts are off. Maybe you're not trusting your instincts. Maybe she's not riding out her emotional waves to make her decisions. But when she is in an aligned space, an aligned lifestyle, an aligned career, her instincts are sharp. You can't lie to her, she'll sniff it out. Like it's quite powerful. The first tone is the most primitive. It is about survival. And when it's filtered through the valley, this is somebody who's going to have very keen instincts in their connections, in their place of work and in their relationships. And there's going to be times in their life where their instincts aren't working properly. Where this all gets really interesting is when we look at her determination variable, the way she's designed to feed and consume things in life. And this is not just about food. A really great way to understand this is we also consume content. Our system is taking in things all the time. Sure, we're taking in food, but we're taking in other people's energies. We're taking in experiences. So how do we need to be set up in order to properly digest life? Trixie needs to be set up in the valley, a space that she resonates with, where she can determine how frequently she wants to do things or not, how much of something she wants to participate in or not, who she feels great connection to or not. And when she has properly set herself up that way, she's ready to feed. She's ready to be nourished. What I love about this variable combination is she's a hot thirst eater. There's potential that her variable here could flip to a 4, and she's not outer vision, but inner vision. However, based on her lifestyle and the way she presents, I do think this is accurate, which I will explain. However, as a hot thirst person, getting the piping hot tea is actually very nourishing. I don't mean like having peppermint tea. I mean like the gossip, getting the hot goss, getting the information. We know she likes information as a Valleys person, but she's fed by the hot topics, the hot goss. On a food level, this is somebody who would need to have their food really mixed, really wet. These are people who typically like a lot of smoothies or dips or saucy, juicy things because it's easier for them to digest. Now, if we think about that metaphorically, they need juicy information. It's not just about the food on the plate, but the things that are feeding this person in life, juicy information in life. Piping hot tea is a really great kind of modern example of how that could translate. Something that's unique about the third color in the determination variable is they need a certain mix of things in order to properly digest it. So that's why smoothie bowls are like something these people might really like sometimes, or putting a lot of ingredients together that's going to almost make a potion. If they have super simple things, it may not give them what they need. They really do need it put in that cauldron and mixed up to make something new and alchemized for them. And what's interesting about this type of body, when somebody is a hot thirst person, their body is actually going to be a little bit cooler. And they need that hot food, and so it's easier for them to digest because it's harder for their bodies to warm up the food to actually get the nutrients out of it. So putting warm things in the system is very, very supportive of this system. So in theory, living somewhere that is a little bit cooler could actually make it easier to eat. Because you want to have warm things. If you're in an environment that is hot and you have to have hot things, you might reach for cool things. And if she is a hot thirst person and not a cold thirst person, putting cold things in her system, like having a raw diet, is actually not great for her because her body has to work so hard to actually warm up that food to get the nutrients out of it. So if something is too cool for her, like even listen to how that sounds. It's too cool for me. It's not for her. Now, here's where things get really interesting. As an outer vision person, this gives her an active brain. And when you have an active brain, this is a hungry brain. And a sign when things are kind of out of whack is this body just keeps eating and they could become underweight because the body starts eating itself because it's eating. It's confused. And something that we see with fifth colors, whether that is valleys or sound or even fifth tones, are these people, they can have weight fluctuations. They've taken in too much, didn't respect their limit, or they can become underweight because they're not eating enough or doing something enough. So there is this volume sensitivity, amount sensitivity. And if this person is not set up properly, there's risk that their body is just going to keep eating itself. And I think this is interesting because in Trixie's work, she was often in her earlier career making fun of her weight, or calling herself chubby or curvy because she was a man dressing up in a female form and she's 6 feet tall. And then as her health started changing, she started losing a lot of weight. And I remember this is when Ozempic was really picking up and a lot of people were teasing her about her weight, that she was getting so skinny, or she was a skinny legend. And she just started to actually look unwell. And I remember feeling like, I don't think we should be talking about people's weight because I don't think this is someone taking Ozempic. It looks like somebody is suffering and in deep struggle, and they could be experiencing weight loss due to stress. When we have a totally open head center, this is somebody who can get a lot of mental anxiety, pressure in their head. We can have pressure in the head or pressure in the root, which is like time pressure, rushing to get things done. Where she's got a consistent way of accessing or working through time pressure, but where she's more vulnerable and needs to do a little bit more life learning is in managing her anxiety. A lot of people can put thoughts in her head, and that can stress her out. And she can just get pressure in the head. So interestingly, she can get pressure in the head. She's got vulnerability in the nose area and the neck area, and she's an outer vision person. So, she's an architect. She's got this visionary quality to her. One of the super abilities in an outer vision person is they can see something and see how it's going to come together. They're also very sensitive to visual stimulation. And something I think is a really good example of Trixie is she's made comments about being surrounded by one color, pink, and that is almost relaxing to her to be surrounded in pink. Very interesting. It makes her feel like she has her life together. and it's a stimulating color. Now, it is possible she's inner vision, and a lot of people who are inner vision have psychic potential and psychic abilities, and Trixie has started to say, I'm so psychic. So either way, whether she's outer vision or inner vision, there is a sensitivity to vision. This is a visionary person, no matter how you cut it. And the reason I think that she might be this one, this outer vision, is because of the way she's designed her makeup. It's very architectural. It's very lines. It's very much a character that she has designed, crafted. These are people who are stimulated by visual things. And just the way she's built her craft in her life, she sets up homes. She sets up the hotel that she did, the Trixie Motel, I should say. She's really designed and crafted a makeup company. These are all signs of somebody who is, in alignment. Like, these are all super abilities of potentials that we could see in an outer vision person. So here we have someone on the extraordinary side who has the potential to be an absolute visionary, see how things are broken down and how they need to come together, is able to kind of present things and put it into a creative mix that is just very iconic. And on the vulnerability side, this is somebody who could have eye issues, could have anxiety issues. There is a predetermined set of symptoms that I've been tracking in my work. This is not part of classic human design, but something I've been accumulating as someone with a journalism background. I'm just noticing and tracking the patterns that a lot of people have when they have third tones or when they have first tones. And isn't that curious that a lot of people who have these third tones have these type of ailments or issues, whether that is eye issues or anything with the mask, anything with the face, acne. But what's worth dry skin. But what's worth mentioning is when there is inner vision here, these are people who could have alopecia or hair loss. And I'm just mentioning that because Trixie's bald and always makes fun of herself for going bald. Now she wears wigs all the time, and that could be causing stress on the head, So as an overall examination of what's going on here, she seems to have made changes in her lifestyle that I think are really benefiting her health. And I just want to point them out. This is a person who is in the public eye and is in the spotlight and is naturally feeling a ton of pressure from the world that most of us can't relate to. Most of us just cannot relate to the volume of pressure that she's going to experience in her life. And I think that should just be acknowledged. And a way in recent years that she has been handling that pressure so she doesn't have a mental breakdown is she's been unplugging and disconnecting for about a season at a time. So she's been taking summers off and she's just been pre-scheduling her content, so it seems like things are still rolling out for her. The risk here is that she doesn't actually disconnect and unplug. She still maintains doing things and she doesn't get that recharge that she actually needs. But since she's been experimenting with this, again, a 1-3 investigating martyr is a very experimental person. Sometimes they just need to break up with things. But since she has been experimenting with this and taking time out, her weight has restored and returned to a more place of balance. She's been very vocal about being experimental with her projects, trying new things, and even performing more outside of drag, which I think is what is needed at this point in her career. How is she able to kind of bow and have reverence for this character that she built, saved her in a way? Trixie really saved and helped Brian come into his skin and who he wanted to be after somebody who had experienced a lot of trauma in early life. And a part of this became a character to hide behind. And also it became a character to be so honest and open through and unfiltered. So how do you have a healthy, open communication relationship with the character you're playing, especially if it's in performance? So there will need to be limits set on how often Trixie can perform as this character. But let's just evaluate. She performs as Trixie and does DJ sets. She's a recording musician. Those are very Valley's activities. She has a makeup line. I love that for an outer vision person. She's a famous YouTuber. She's done reality TV shows such as Drag Race, but also Trixie Motel and in flipping her home as well. So she's gone into like the TLC network almost, like home renovations. She can do anything. This is such an amazing example of the manifesting generator when this design type allows themselves to live their life according to their creativity. And I really just love her as an example. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. Let's just summarize some of the high points of her variable and her body. She has an active brain, where she has a hungry brain. Her brain needs to regularly be feeding itself. And if that's not done, she's going to, her body is going to keep eating. And so it has the potential to get confused. She has the brilliant potential to have these visionary qualities, to see how things could come together, to be able to put a look together. This is somebody who sometimes these are kids who take things apart when they're little to understand how they work. But it's also possible if her birth time changes that she's an inner vision person. And inner vision people are also visionary. They have psychic potential. They're able to elevate their consciousness and see into different timelines. But she's pulling up as an outer vision person. So the outer vision person is really a visionary in a different way. It's not so much that they're elevating their consciousness, but they're looking at the material plane. How does this work? How can I put it together? What is the creative way this can be assembled? And in an unhealthy potential, there are potential symptoms such as issues with the mask, issues with the eyes, issues like psychosis or stress or anxiety. And this can really impact the system, impact the neck area, impact the head area, anything on the face. Sometimes we can have skin issues here. Sometimes we can even get chronic issues in that area. And this is filtered through somebody who is a thirst color, making her a hot thirst dietary regimen. She's fed by the piping hot tea. She needs a she needs a hot mix of certain things in her life in order to actually feel good and feel well. And she will need different volumes of these things because she's a valleys person. So she needs a high liquid diet. Things that are very juicy or really saucy or really wet are going to be really good for her. And that's not just about food she's putting into her mouth, but anything she's consuming and putting into her system. So we want to think about that in an expanded way. But also she's going to need to just mix it up sometimes. If she sticks with something too long, it's just going to simply stop working for her. And it will be important through her life to recognize when it's time to switch it up. This is a valleys person. This is somebody who has to plug into an information stream. They often have a lot of sources of information coming at them. And when they start to really become someone in their life, they too become a source for other people. She could be a source of inspiration. She could be a source of absolutely anything. But valleys people really need to have open connection, two-way communication with their relationships in life. If there's a communication breakdown or they're taking in too much of someone when they just rather not, they can start to have breakdowns in the body, like not listening to her instincts, or weight gain or weight loss can come in here, or simply feeling fried or feeling really achy can also show up here, or pains in certain spots. That's a sign that the lifestyle is not really working for this person. So the valleys person is all about communication, all about expression, all about limits and amounts, how much of something before they've had enough, and they really need to learn how to respect their limits in life. Respecting their limits is absolutely essential. One layer below this is an external sense of smell. When she is in a aligned valley, her instincts are sharp, they're firing, she knows what to do, she can sniff out a liar, she can trust her instincts. And when she's not connected to, or she's not in an aligned valley, it's like her instincts aren't there helping her. She doesn't have access to them. She's not perhaps trusting herself, or she's not able to see the best path, or she's getting too caught up in her trade, in her marketplace. She's putting too much emphasis on one thing when she really needs to be kind of having multiple avenues of energy flow that's coming out of her. I love Trixie Mattel, and I started watching her YouTube channel and also some of the art she made with fellow collaborator and creator Katya on the Wow Presents Plus channel, and also some of the art they've done together on Netflix when they watch shows and comment on the shows that they're watching. And I started watching her work around 2020 when the pandemic started happening, and I was really appreciative of the comedy and art that she made in the world, and I think she's a beautiful example of this. She's an amazing example of a manifesting generator and all the cool things that these types of people need to get into and play with in order to be creatively fulfilled in their life. But I love the example she is of a valleys person, and examining the deeper tones in her inner architecture just reveals how there are things going on with her body that are signs and cues for her to pay attention to so she can get back in touch with herself and live a lifestyle that really resonates and is aligned with her. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this, if you liked seeing this variable reading of a celebrity star, and if there's anybody else that you would like me to read and look at, let me know in the comments below. I do want to let you know that I'm only interested in reading celebrity charts of people that I actually like. Like, I'm not about to tear someone up or read them to filth in this not kind way. So if you name someone and I'm like, bleh, ew, I'm probably not going to do it. No ill will to you, but I'm really interested in looking at people who I feel are great examples of something. Usually these people have had something go on with their health that we can see in the public eye, and that allows me to show you the weird, curious way I read the tones in the Human Design body graph. What you need to know is this is not the classic way that Human Design tones are translated, but something that I've been observing over the last decade and felt called to speak a little bit more loudly about, because I think we're all waking up to the fact that there is more going on with us that leads to implications on our health. When we're in these unhealthy relationships for a long time, what's that actually doing to my body? When I'm in this unhealthy career that I hate, what is that actually doing to my body? And what I'm proposing is every single body has its own predetermined set of symptoms that it's going to communicate with. And if we start paying attention to those symptoms, we might be able to make lifestyle adjustments that make us healthier, increase our longevity, and give us a higher quality of life for as long as possible. So if you're looking at information this deep, a good practice is to just challenge your birth time, calculate plus or minus 10 minutes on either side just to see if your tones change. And if this information is just way too deep and over your head, start by visiting the Jovian archive to get a reading on how Human Design works and what all the different components of the body graph are. If this information is familiar to you, you know the way the body graph looks, you recognize the energy centers and the gates, and you're ready to learn the inner architecture at the color and tonal level, you're able to learn how to read the variables with me through my Art of Healing variable training at vanesshenry.com. I'll show you how to read the variables across your determination, environment, perspective, and motivation variables, and also show you my unique way of translating the tones and the symptoms that you might have there. This is very valuable to understand for yourself, but it's also amazing for parents when they want to understand what their babies are saying and communicating to them before they're able to speak and be verbal. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let me know if there's any other celebrities you want me to look underneath the hood and read their inner architecture. We'll take a closer look at them in the future when I hear from you.